Without further ado, we will be reading the first book, which is called Walk on the Wild Side by Nicholas Oldland. I apologize if I butcher anyone's names. There once was a bear, a moose, and a beaver who loved adventure. But sometimes their competitive natures got in the way of having fun. One sunny morning, the bear, moose, and the beaver decided it was a great day to climb a mountain. To get to the mountain, they descended into a valley, walked through a grassy field. "Are we there yet?" asked the bear. Waded through a stream and crossed a deep canyon. "Don't look down," said the beaver. At the foot of the mountain, they stopped for a snack. Between mouthfuls, the bear, the moose, and the beaver discussed various ways to make their hike more interesting. The beaver thought the best way to add some excitement was to make it a race. As soon as they finished their last bites, the three of the friends were off and running. The race was on. Thanks to his long legs, the moose took an early lead. The beaver and bear followed right on his tail. Then, just as the moose rounded a bend in the mountain path, a boulder came tumbling down toward him. Fortunately, the moose jumped out of harm's way just in time. Unfortunately, he had jumped over the side of the mountain. When the beaver rounded the bend, the moose was out of sight. Worried that he had fallen behind, the beaver picked up his pace. When the bear came running by, he heard the moose's cry for help. The bear followed the sound to the mountain's edge, where he saw the moose dangling from a tree branch. Fearlessly, the bear attempted a daring rescue. Sadly, he failed. Thanks to the moose's quick reflexes, the bear's life was saved. But now, they were both hanging on for their lives. The moose and the bear's cries for help echoed up the mountain. The beaver followed their calls back down the path. The beaver's instincts kicked in. He chewed down a tree, carved out a few notches, and lowered the simple ladder to the moose and the bear so they could climb up. Back on solid ground, the three friends realized their hike had become a little too exciting. They were going to make it to the top of the mountain. A slower pace might be better. And that's when their hike became truly interesting. They explored a dark cave, discovered a prehistoric fossil, and helped one another along the way. At the end of the day, the bear, the moose, and the beaver agreed that reaching the top of the mountain was great, but enjoying the journey together was even better. And that is the end of Walk on the Wild Side. Once again, that was by Nicholas Oldland. I sort of felt like I had to pick that one first, as the cover alone made it look truly Canadian. coming up next, we have... Oh, I've gone too far. So I can no longer see the author. Let's go back. Next we have Nico Draws a Feeling. And I apologize if I butchered this name, by Bob Rakska. Nico loved to make pictures. Everywhere he went, he carried a box of colored pencils and a pad of paper. Because everywhere he looked, he saw something that inspired him. It might be a mother bird building her nest, or the low autumn sun peeking out from behind a cloud, or the ice cream truck ring-a-linging down the street. When Nico was inspired, it felt like a window opening in his brain. An idea would flit through the open window, like a butterfly, flutter down to his stomach, then along his arms and fingers to his pencils, where it would escape onto his paper in a whirlwind of color. It was a wonderful feeling, and Nico tried to capture it as often as he could. Sometimes he showed his pictures to his friends. "What is it?" one of them would ask. "It's the ring-a-ling of the ice cream truck," Nico would answer. "It doesn't look like the ice cream truck," someone else would say. "It's not the ice cream truck," Nico would explain. "It's the ring-a-ling." "Where's the bell?" "It's not the bell, it's the ring-a-ling." "I don't get it." Sometimes he showed his pictures to his parents. "What is it?" his mom would ask. "It's the warmth of the sun on my face," Nico would answer. "I don't see the sun," his dad would say. "It's not the sun, it's the warm." "Where's your face?" "It's not my face, it's the warm." "Oh." Once, he showed a picture to his teacher, Miss Reed. "What is it?" Miss Reed asked. "It's the hard work of a mother robin building her nest," Nico answered. "Where's the robin?" "It's not a robin, it's her hard work." "So, this is the nest?" "It's not the nest, it's her hard work." "I see." But Miss Reed didn't see. None of them did. One night, Nico sat on his bed, thinking about all the pictures taped to his walls. Then, he looked at himself in the mirror. He was inspired to make another picture. The next day, Nico was heading out with his paper and colored pencils when he noticed a moving truck next door and a girl about his age. "Hi," said the girl. "I'm Iris." "I'm Nico. Hi." "What are you doing with that stuff?" "This? Oh, nothing." "Are you going to draw?" "Well, yeah. I like to make pictures." "Can I see them?" "I don't know," he said. "You might not like them." "But I might," Iris answered. I apologize for this delay. This page is kind of weirdly cut off. I'm trying to make out what the words are. I cannot make them out, so I will just make it up. Nico showed Iris around his room. Walking around the room, she looked at all the pictures. Finally, after looking at every picture in the room, Iris discovered the one behind the door. "Wow," said Iris. "What?" said Nico. "You must have been sad when you made this picture." "How did you know?" Iris thought. "It looks like how I feel. You know, sad because I had to move." Suddenly, Nico felt a window opening in his brain. "Can I make a picture for you?" asked Nico. "For me? Sure," said Iris. Like a butterfly, an idea flitted through the open window, fluttered down to his stomach, and along his arm and fingers to his colored pencils, where it escaped onto the paper in a whirlwind of color. When he was finished, he handed the picture to Iris. "I'm not sure exactly, but it makes me feel like I made a new friend." Nico stared at Iris. "You can see that?" "I can feel it," Iris replied, "like a butterfly landing on my finger." "A butterfly?" asked Nico. "I know, it sounds weird." Nico smiled. "Not to me." And that was Nico Draws a Feeling by Bob... what is your last name, Bob? Bob Rakzak. And I must say, that one was wonderfully illustrated. It's a shame I wasn't able to show it on stream. It kind of gives me Little Prince vibes, if you're familiar with that work. "Hello, Clogger. I've been lurking for a few minutes. Have me on the background, so browsing Black Friday deals, enjoying the chill vibes." Thank you very much, Clogger. I'm glad to have you here. Grab some water. Mim is a big kid, and it's nowhere near his bedtime, except for the fact that it's almost 2:30 a.m. for him. Welcome, Mim. The third book we'll be reading tonight is called Rapunzel and the Seven Dwarves by Willie Claflin. Oh, this book is horizontal, is it? I don't like that. Can I zoom in a bit more on your book? Is that possible? It is not. Okay, I'm just gonna have to be really close to this book. Actually, no, I will skip this book. The text is too small for me to read, unfortunately. Let's return that book. And instead, we will be reading Pete the Cat Pete's Big Lunch by James Dean. Here comes Pete. It's lunchtime. Pete is ready to eat. What should Pete eat? A sandwich would be nice. Yes, Pete wants a sandwich. Pete opens the fridge. He takes out a loaf of bread. He finds a yummy fish. He adds tomato and mayo. Pete looks at a sandwich. It is too small. Something is missing. Pete knows what it needs. His sandwich needs an apple. Pete loves apples. His sandwich needs crackers. Crackers are crunchy. Pete loves crunchy crackers. Pete looks at his sandwich again. It is still too small. Pete is very hungry. Pete adds a pickle. Pete adds cheese. Pete adds an egg. 2 hot dogs, a banana, and a can of beans. Something is missing. Pete adds ice cream. He takes 3 huge scoops. Pete's sandwich is too big for Pete to eat. He wonders what to do. Pete thinks and thinks. I've got it, Pete says. Pete calls all his friends. He asks them to come over. Everyone goes to Pete's house. They are all very hungry. Pete shows them his big lunch. Are you hungry? Asks Pete. Pete's sandwich is big enough for everyone. Dig in, says Pete. Pete's sandwich is good. Pete's sandwich is very good. Pete's sandwich is all gone. Pete's friends are full. They liked Pete's big lunch. Thanks for lunch, Pete's friends say. Thanks for sharing. You're welcome, Pete says. Sharing is cool. So, that was Pete the Cat, Pete's Big Lunch. I would like to point out that, once again, Pete is a cat. He wanted to make all of that. And when it says he, adds a loaf of bread or a banana, he literally pulls it out of the fridge, doesn't, remove the wrapper for the bread, doesn't peel the banana, doesn't take the mayo out of the jar. He just starts stacking things one on top of the other. Next, we will be reading a classic, Franklin and the Thunderstorm, by Paulette Bourgeois. Franklin could count by 2s and tie his shoes. He could name the months of the year and all the seasons. He could read the thermometer, and he checked the barometer every day. Franklin worried about the weather because he was afraid of storms. One day, Franklin was supposed to play at Fox's house, but the sky was getting dark, and the clouds were thick. Maybe I shouldn't go, Franklin said to his mother. She looked out the window. It probably won't rain until later, she said. You have time to get to Fox's. Franklin put on his boots and took the umbrella. As Franklin hurried to Fox's house, he kept looking at the sky. The clouds moved quickly, and the wind swirled dirt in the air. Franklin felt all jumpy inside. Fox was playing outside when Franklin arrived. Franklin pointed nervously to the sky. "I think we should go inside, don't you?" he asked. "Not yet," Fox grinned. "I love watching the clouds move and feeling the wind blow. It's exciting." "I think it's scary," said Franklin. Beaver, Snail, and Hawk came over to play too. "My fur feels funny when it's about to storm," said Fox. "My feathers get all ruffled," said Hawk. Beaver sniffed. "I can smell a storm coming." The wind became stronger. The hawk flew loop-the-loops. "Whee!" he cried. Franklin held onto his hat and shivered. It was almost as dark as night when big, fat raindrops began to fall. "We should go in," shouted Franklin. "No," said Fox. "Follow me." They raced to the treehouse, where it was dry. "Fox," called his mother, "time for everyone to come in." "It's all right," Fox shouted back. "We're in the tree." Fox's mother was there in a second. "It's dangerous to be near a tree during a storm," she said. "Lightning strikes tall things first, and you might get hurt." Franklin held onto Fox's mother all the way from the tree to the house. They were barely in the door, and there was a flash of zigzag light. "Lightning!" shrieked Franklin. He trembled. Kaboom! "Thunder!" he screamed. "It's okay, Franklin," said his friends. "We're safe here." But Franklin crawled deep inside his shell. Fox's mother brought out treats. Still, Franklin wouldn't come out. Franklin's friends begged him to play, but Franklin stayed put. Then, with a flash and a crash, the lights went out. "Don't worry," said Fox's mother. She lit candles and turned on a flashlight. "Won't you come out now?" she asked Franklin. "No, thank you," he mumbled. "Don't be afraid," said Hawk. "All that noise is just cloud giants playing drums in the sky." Franklin peeked out. "Really?" he asked. "No, it's not," giggled Snail. "That noise is made when the giants go bowling." Franklin came out of his shell. "But what about the lightning?" "That's easy," said Hawk. "Cloud giants are turning their lights on and off." Fox smiled. "I think it's the giants swinging from their chandeliers." Franklin laughed. "Giants? That's ridiculous," said Beaver. "Mr. Owl said lightning is a big spark of electricity that travels from the sky to the ground. The spark is so hot that it makes the air around it pop. That's the sound of thunder." "Amazing," said Franklin. Franklin felt a little better. He even played flashlight tag with his friends. Soon, there was hardly any lightning. The thunder was a low rumble from far away, and the rain stopped. Then, the lights went on. "Storm's over," said Fox. "Let's go outside and play." "Look," said Franklin. "A rainbow." "I know why the storm is over," Franklin said. "Those giants heard there's a pot of gold at every rainbow's end. They've gone to find it." Even Beaver had to smile. And that was Franklin and the Thunderstorm by Paulette Bourgeois. Welcome back, Samus. You weren't gone too long. I know it feels like it when we're reading kids' books, because they're like 5 minutes each. But you were not gone that long. Up next, we have The Boy in the Drawer by Robert Munsch. When Shelley went into her room, there were socks on the floor, socks on the bed, socks on the dresser, socks on the wall, and socks everywhere. "Yikes," said Shelley. "What a mess." And from out of the sock drawer, someone yelled, "Be quiet." So Shelley crawled across the floor and very carefully looked into the drawer. A small boy was sitting there reading a book. Shelley ran downstairs and said, "Mommy, Mommy, there's a boy in my sock drawer." "Tell him to go home," said the mother. "And there are socks all over my room." "Clean them up," said the mother. But, clean them up," said the mother. So Shelley went back upstairs and looked in the drawer. The boy was gone. She cleaned up the whole room and went downstairs for lunch. When Shelley went back upstairs, there was a large bump in the middle of the bed. She pulled back the covers, and there was the boy, watering a tomato plant. Shelley ran downstairs and said, "Mommy, Mommy, my bed is a mess." "Clean it up," said the mother. But, clean it up," said the mother. When Shelley went back upstairs, the boy was gone. She cleaned up the whole mess by herself. Shelley went downstairs and read a book. The room started to get dark. Shelley looked around and saw a big bump behind the drape. She very quietly crawled over to the drape and yanked it up. There was the boy. He was painting the window black. "Go away," said Shelley. The boy grew 5 centimeters. "Beat it," said Shelley. The boy grew 5 more centimeters. Shelley took a paintbrush and painted the boy's ears black. He grew 5 more centimeters. "Help!" yelled Shelley, and she ran off to find her mother and father. They weren't in the basement, and they weren't upstairs. They were in the kitchen. So was a lot of water. It was all coming out of the bread box. Shelley walked very quietly to the bread box and yanked it open. There was the boy. He was taking a bath. He said, "Please go away. You are bothering me." Shelley had an idea. She turned the hot water all the way off. She turned the cold water all the way on. When the cold water hit the boy, he jumped up, grew 50 centimeters, and sat in the middle of the kitchen table. The father and mother both said, "Shelley, tell your friend to go home." So Shelley said, "Beat it." The boy grew 10 centimeters. Shelley decided to try something different. Very carefully, she walked over and patted the boy. Right away, he got a little smaller. Then, her father went to the table and gave the boy a hug. He got very small. Then, her mother gave the boy a kiss, and he disappeared entirely. "And who will clean up the kitchen?" said the mother. "And who will clean up the kitchen?" said the father. "And who will clean up the kitchen?" said Shelley. And the mother gave Shelley a hug, and the father gave Shelley a hug. And she cleaned up the whole mess with no trouble at all. That was The Boy in the Drawer by Robert Munsch. That was a really messed up story. Yeah, I have to agree with you. Especially the part at the end where parents are like, "Nah, it's your problem, child. Also, we don't care that we may have just murdered someone." Up next, we have At the Zoo by Beth Johnson. Oh, you are horizontal, but at least you have big text. I can read you. Let's go to the zoo. Do not go alone, said Miss Hall. Go with your buddies. We are not alone, said Jasmine. We are buddies, said Kendra. We are not alone, said Derek. We are buddies, said Victor. Look, the elephants are not alone. Look, the lions are not alone. Look, said Miss Hall, the monkeys are not alone. The monkeys are buddies too. Wow, was that the whole book? Okay, that was the whole book. That was At the Zoo. Who are you by? That was an entire book. Keep in mind that book was designed for a 3-year-old reading level. But don't worry, I think I aced it. But yes, once again, that was At the Zoo by Beth Johnson. Up next, we have The Ninjabread Man by Katrina Charman. I platinumed that book. Exactly. Yes, Ninjabread Man. Before we'll start, I will take a quick drink. No 3-year-old book can defeat Popeye. Once upon a time, in a small house in the forest, a lonely old man decided to make himself a friend. He baked a gingerbread ninja, a ninjabread man. But when the ninjabread man turned golden brown, he jumped up and ran out the door. "Stop!" yelled the old man, chasing after him. But the ninjabread man kept running, shouting, "Kapow! Yah!" and Shazam! You can't catch me, I'm the Ninjabread Man. Along the path, a hungry pig was sniffing for acorns beneath the mud. He saw the delicious Ninjabread Man and shouted, "Stop! I want to eat you." The Ninja Bread Man twisted out of the way, singing Kapow, Hiya, and Shazam. You can't catch me, I'm the Ninja Bread Man. At the edge of the forest, a herd of cows grazed in a field. One of them spotted the yummy Ninja Bread Man and squeezed through the fence. Stop, I want to eat you, the cow cried. The Ninja Bread Man rolled right over the cow's back. Kapow, Hiya, and Shazam. You can't catch me, I'm the Ninja Bread Man. Farther down the hill, a flock of chicks pecked at the ground looking for grain. One by one, they smelled the Ninja Bread Man as he whirled and twirled toward them. Stop! We want to eat you! They rushed toward him, their hungry beaks wide open. But the Ninja Bread Man backflipped over them. Kapow! Hiya, and Shazam! You can't catch me, I'm the Ninja Bread Man, he chuckled. Then he reached a deep, wide river. He searched for a way to get across without getting soggy. A crafty fox was watching. I'll help you cross the river, he said. Just climb onto my back. Stop, yelled the old man, who had finally caught up. I can teach you to jump this river in one single bound. The Ninja Bread Man laughed. Haha, I don't need help from anyone. I'm the Ninja Bread Man. He took a flying leap, but missed the bank, landing on a drooping tree branch. To his surprise, the old man leaped across the water, grabbing the Ninja Bread Man's arm and taking him safely to the other side. Wow, gasped the Ninja Bread Man. Can you teach me those moves? The old man nodded. Soon, the Ninja Bread Man was the star of ninja school. He learned how to jump across rivers and avoid hungry foxes. That ended incredibly suddenly. But that was The Ninja Bread Man by Katrina Charman. Let's return that so other kids can learn the majesty of Ninja Bread. And thank you for the quote, Samus. No 3-year-old book can defeat Popeye. And it is true. Can I request that you tell us the moral of these stories once you finish? Yes. The moral of this story is that every old man with a beard is secretly a master of martial arts. That is the moral of this story. Okay. Is that the moral you wanted to get out of that story, Samus? I thought I returned you, Ninja Bread Man. Return. Aha. That is infinitely better than what you wanted. There you go. Okay. The next book we'll be reading is called Tooth Trouble by Bruce Hale. More specifically, the full title is Clark the Shark, Tooth Trouble. Just so you're clear, everyone is a shark. Clark the Shark loved reef soccer. Flick it and kick it, he cried. But sometimes, it didn't love him. Pow, ouchie, ow, ow. His tooth hurt. His tooth wobbled. What if it fell out of his mouth? You need to see a dentist, said Miss Mahi, the school nurse. What's a dentist? Asked Clark. Someone who fixes teeth, said Miss Mahi. I'll call your mother. As Clark waited for his mother, along came his friend, Joey Mackerel. Check this out, said Clark. Wiggle, 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 ow, ow, ow. Cool, said Joey. Billy Ray Ray joined them. He is a manta ray, because that might not come through. Billy Ray Ray is a manta ray. I'm going to the dentist today, said Clark the shark. No way, said Billy Ray. I hear dentists are scarier than a box full of blue whales. Really, said Joey. Really, said Clark. Really and truly, said Billy Ray. Uh-oh and oh no. Clark was worried. And dentists are meaner than a 10-page math test, said Billy Ray Ray. Uh-oh and oh no. Don't listen to him, said Joey Mackerel. You'll be fine. Clark wasn't so sure. When his mother came to get him, he asked, Do I have to go? What's wrong? His mother asked. Billy Ray Ray said dentists are mean and scary, said Clark. Billy Ray also told you that whales can fly, said his mom. Oh yeah, said Clark. Then a rhyme popped into his head. Don't shed a tear, 'cause there's nothing to fear. That's right, said his mom. At last, Clark relaxed and smiled. He was his usual sharky self, until they reached the dentist's office. Clark thought a single scary thought. What if Billy Ray was right? At the dentist's office, Clark wailed. He hung on to the door. He clung to the chairs. No, he said, you can't make me. It took his mother, 2 dads, and a dental assistant to get Clark into the dentist chair. And then, uh-oh and oh no. In came the dentist. Hi, she said. I'm Dr. Pia. What has teeth but cannot eat? Clark stared. Dr. Pia was tiny. A comb, she said. Get it? Dr. Pia juggled her tools. What time do you visit a dentist? I don't know, said Clark. 2:30, she said. The dentist played happy music. Dr. Pia was nice. She had the gentlest fins and the silliest jokes. What's a dentist's favorite animal? Asked Dr. Pia. I don't know, said Clark. What? A molar bear, she said. They laughed together. Ha ha ha, roared Clark. Dr. Pia worked on his mouth, and then... Here's that bad boy, said Dr. Pia. She held up the tooth. A new one will come in soon. Want a seaweed lollipop? The next day, Joey asked, So is the dentist scary? Clark smiled and said, I didn't shed a tear, because there was nothing to fear. And that was Clark the Shark. Tooth Trouble by Bruce Hale. And the moral of the story is, never trust a manta ray. They are lying dicks. Thank you for the quote, Samuses. Just so we're clear, everyone's a shark. Let's return you. Where did you go? Stop hiding from me. No worries, Samus. Yeah, that is more important. Why was the shark whaling? Because they didn't want to go into the dentist. Because their friend the manta ray was a dick and told them all dentists are scary and mean. I missed the joke. Oh, why was the shark whaling? Why was the shark whaling? Because sharks aren't whales. He's slowly turning into a whale. Alright. Wow, it's already been an hour of kids' books. What's my time? 1, 2, 3, 4. Just remember, in 1 hour, I can read 10 kids' books. I'm gonna put that on my resume. Up next, we have A Scarf for Keiko by Anne Malaspina. Thank you for the quote, Samus. Just remember, in 1 hour I can read 10 kids' books. I'm going to put that on my resume. Who would have thought reading kids' books is the thing that gets me quoted the most? Okay, A Scarf for Keiko. The needles slipped from Sam's hands, and the wool tangled up in knots. Knitting made him want to pull out his hair. Next to him, Keiko bent over her wool. Her needles flew like the wind. Click-clack, click-clack. Rows of blue stitches grew inch by inch. After lunch, Sam played catch with his best friend, Jack. Have you heard from Mike? Jack asked, as he caught the ball smoothly. Sam shook his head. When he thought about his older brother fighting in the war, Sam's stomach tied up in knots like the yarn on his desk. Don't worry, said Jack. He's probably too busy winning the war to write a letter. After school, Sam saw Keiko pedaling past him down East First Street on her fire-engine red bicycle. A car slowed down. A teenage boy leaned out the window. Splat! An egg landed on the sidewalk. Go back to Japan, the boy yelled. Her bike skidded, but Keiko didn't fall. She pedaled even faster around the corner as Sam watched. Jack elbowed him. You shouldn't talk to Keiko Saito. What would Mike think? Sam's brother had helped Keiko fix her bicycle once. He'd shown her how to patch a flat tire and grease the chain. Mike wouldn't mind Sam talking to Keiko. That was too hard to explain to Jack. I didn't talk to her, Sam said. She talked to me. On Friday, Mom asked Sam to go to her favorite flower shop in Little Tokyo to pick up flowers for the Shabbat table. The trolley stopped in front of Mr. Saito's grocery store. Mr. Saito was sweeping up broken glass. Sam got off the trolley, with his head down. Mr. Saito didn't see him. To make it clear, because you can't see this illustration, the grocery store, he's cleaning up the glass because people have broken his windows, and he has put up a sign on top of his grocery store that says, "I am an American." The flower shop was closed. Illustration again. He's boarded up the windows, and people have spray painted on top of it, "Go back to Japan." President Roosevelt is worried that people with Japanese ancestors are spies, he said. He's sending them away. Mom shook her head. The war is terrible. My sisters in Poland are in great danger. Mike is risking his life to fight. And now, little Tokyo looks like a ghost town. Sam put down his fork. But Keiko isn't a spy. Of course she isn't, Dad said. Mom nodded. I'm going to invite the Saitos for dinner tomorrow. They're good Americans and the best neighbors. Keiko wasn't at school on Monday. Knitting was a disaster. Sam almost poked himself in the eye. He threw down his needles. I can't do it. This is a letter Sam has written to Mike. Dear Mike, I'm sorry that I won't be able to knit you a pair of socks. I'm a terrible knitter. Keiko's the best knitter in our class, but she may have to go away soon. Please come home safely. Your brother, Sam. After school, Keiko was sitting on her front steps. Hello, Keiko, Sam called out. She didn't look up. The only sound was her needles. Click-clack, click-clack. The Saitos can't come to dinner, Mom told Sam. They have to pack. They just learned that they're being sent north to an internment camp in the desert. She gestured at the unfamiliar tea set on the kitchen table. They can only bring what they can carry, so I offered to take care of Miss Saito's precious tea set. I told her it'll be here when they get home. How long will they be away? Sam asked. Mom sighed. No one knows. And then they were gone. The morning after the Saitos left, Sam saw it. Keiko's bicycle in front of his house. On the handlebars was a pair of blue wool socks with a note. The note read, Dear Sam, here are the socks I knitted for Mike. Tell him to come home safely. Your friend and neighbor, Keiko. P.S. You can borrow my bike until I get back. In his mother's yarn bag, Sam found a ball of red wool. Socks were too hard to make, but Sam could knit something else for Keiko. He remembered Miss Olson's advice. Pick up the yarn, wrap it around the needle, pull the stitch through. Click-clack, click-clack. Come home safely. Sam's needles flew faster and faster, and rows of red stitches grew inch by inch. Dear Keiko, I want to make this scarf for you to wear while you're away. Your friend, Sam. And that was the end of A Scarf for Keiko by Anna Malspina. Samus, I'm not gonna do a dumb moral of the story for this because that was a very serious book, a lot more serious than I honestly was expecting. But what I would say from that is, yeah, that was pretty dark for a kid's book. But the moral of the story is, like, these two people, they're very different. They come from different places, different cultures, maybe different religions, but at the end of the day, they were people and they were able to overcome any, like, prejudice and racism and anything like that they had. As for your other things, first of all, hello, Geeky. How are you doing? Samus, what's happening with this picture is I set up a 1 hour long transition from one image of books to one image of a tiger falling asleep. And it is slowly transitioning. That book was a lot deeper than I was thinking. I just need like a second to recompose myself. I do think it was a wonderful story, though. Okay. So up next... You're okay? It's your break time at work, 3 a.m.? I do not know how you do it. I could not do overnight work. Up next, we have a Dr. Seuss book, as it was requested by Beardy. I was unfortunately not able to check out One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish as he wanted. Instead, we have Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose. Okay. Oh, you have tiny text. Will you rotate for me? Is that a thing you will do? Will not. Why will you not rotate? Okay. It is quite small. I will attempt to... Actually, can I increase the font on this book? No, I cannot. That is unfortunate. Okay. So I will apologize if reading this is a bit slow. The text is very tiny. Up at Lake Winnebago, the far northern shore, lives a huge herd of moose, about 60 or more, and they all go around in a big happy bunch, looking for nice, tender... What the heck is that word? Moose moss to munch, I think is what it says. Up at Lake Winnebago, one day... Oh my gosh. I might have to stop this. It is quite small. Yeah, and he makes up his own words, which makes it so hard for me. I think this says lunching. They were lunching, just strolling along and enjoying their munching. For the moose moss that day was especially fine. When it happened that Thidwick, the last moose in line, saw a bingle bug sitting, the bug called out, "Hey, it's such a long road, and it's such a hot day. Would you mind if I rode on your horns for a way?" "Of course not," smiled Thidwick, the big-hearted moose. "I'm happy my antlers can be of some use." There's room there to spare, and I'm happy to share. Be my guest, and I hope that you're comfortable there. So the Binglebug picked out a nice, easy seat, and the moose went on looking for moose moss to eat. Well, an hour or so later, the bug heard a squeak and heard the small voice of a tree spider speak. "I say," said the spider, "you've got a fine place. That moose seems quite friendly. Has such a nice face. If I got on too, do you think he would mind?" "Up aboard," laughed the bug, "and I think you'll find that the moose won't object. He's the big-hearted kind." "I accept," said the spider, with joy and delight, and he started a web on the horn to the right. While the spider was spinning, he heard a gay song, and a fresh little zinazoo bird came along. He stopped, and he stared, and he chirped, "Well, well, well. What a smart place to build, but a great place to dwell. I've been living on trees ever since I was born, but here's something new, why not live on a horn? If there's room there for two, then there's room there for three. There's plenty of room," laughed the bug, "and it's free." Thidwick stopped walking. What was all that talking? 3 guests had caught Thidwick the moose unawares. "Hey," he called out, "what goes on there upstairs?" "Just building a nest, sir," the zinazoo said, and began yanking hairs out of poor Thidwick's head. He plucked out exactly 204. "Don't worry," he laughed, "you can always grow more." Then he dozed off to sleep in his fine moose hair nest. "This bird," murmured Thidwick, "is sort of a pest. But I'm a good sport, so I'll just let him rest. For a host above all must be nice to his guest." Besides now, it's getting quite late in the day, and early tomorrow they'll all go away. But alas, the next morning, the sun's early light brought to Thidwick's sad eyes a most unwelcome sight. "Meet my wife," said the bird. "I was married last night. And perhaps, by the way, I should mention to you that her uncle is coming to live with us too. You're a very fine host, so I knew you'd be willing." Then the uncle, a woodpecker, started in drilling. All Thidwick's friends shouted, "Get rid of those pests." "I would, but I can't," sobbed poor Thidwick. "They're guests." "Guests indeed," his friends answered, and all of them frowned. "If those are your guests, we don't want you around. You can't stay with us, 'cause you're just not our sort." Then they all turned their backs and walked away with a snort. Now the big friendless moose walked alone and forlorn, with 4 great big woodpecker holes in his horn. "What holes?" whispered Herman, a squirrel who spied him. "But holes to hide nuts in. Mind if I tried 'em?" "They're yours," called the woodpecker. "Get right inside 'em." The big-hearted moose runs a public hotel. "Bring your nuts, bring your wife, bring your children as well." So the whole squirrel family all jumped on Pell Mell? I can't read that. I can't tell if it's made up or not. And the very next thing, the poor animal knew, a bobcat and turtle were living there too. Now, what was the big-hearted moose going to do? Well, what would you do if it happened to you? You couldn't say scat, because that wouldn't be right. You couldn't shout scram, because that isn't polite. A host has to put up with all kinds of pests, for a host above all must be nice to his guests. So you'd try hard to smile, and you'd try to look sweet, and you'd go right on looking for some moose moss to eat. But now, it was winter, and that wasn't easy. For moose moss gets scarce when the weather gets freezy. The food was soon gone on the cold northern shore of Lake Winnebago. There just was no more. And all Thidwick's friends swam away in a bunch to the south of the lake, where there's some moose moss to munch. He watched the herd leaving, and then Thidwick knew. He'd starve if he stayed here. He'd have to go too. He stepped in the water. Then oh, what a fuss. "Stop," screamed the guests. "You can't do this to us. These horns are our home. And you've no right to take our home to that far distant side of the lake." "Be fair," Thidwick begged, with a lump in his throat. "We're fair," said the bug. "We'll decide this by vote. All those in favor of going, say aye. All those in favor of staying, say nay." "Aye," shouted Thidwick. But when he was done, "Nay," they all yelled. He lost 11-1. "We win," screamed the guests, "by a very large score." And poor starving Thidwick climbed back on the shore. Then do you know what those pests did? No, because I can't read this. They somethinged in some more. Bullets come zinging right past Thidwick's face. Guns were banging all over the place. "Get that moose! Get that moose!" Thidwick heard a voice call. "Fire again and again, and shoot straight, one and all." "We must get his head for the Harvard Club wall." Thidwick took to his heels with that load on his head. With 500 pounds on his horn, the moose fled. He could have run faster without all those pests, but a host, after all, must be nice to his guests. Up canyon, off cliff, over wild rocky trail, with bullets bang bouncing around him like hail. Up gully, through gulch, and down slippery sluice, with his hard-hearted guests, raced the soft-hearted moose. Oh my gosh, this text is going to be the death of my eyeballs. Then finally they had him, because of those pests he had run out of luck. Because of those guests on his horns he was stuck. He gasped, he fell faint, and the whole world went fuzzy. Thidwick was finished completely, or was he? Finished? Not Thidwick. Decidedly not. It's true he wasn't. He was in a most terrible spot. But now he remembered a thing he'd forgot. A wonderful something that happens each year. To the horns of all moose and the horns of all deer. Today was the day Thidwick happened to know that old horns come off and new horns can grow. And he called to the pests in his horns as he threw 'em. You wanted my horns, now you're quite welcome to 'em. Keep 'em, they're yours. As for me, I shall take myself to the far, distant shores of the lake. And he swam Winnebago and found his old bunch, and arrived just in time for a wonderful lunch. At the south of the lake, where there's moose moss to munch. His old horns today are where you knew they would be. His guests are still on them, all stuffed as they should be. Okay. What? Yeah, I don't know what the heck is gone with kids' books. Is this why? Are we just like scarring children? So that was Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose by Dr. Seuss. What? Samus, the moral of the story is, when in doubt, when people are hunting you, just throw your friends at them, and then you can escape. Okay. We'll do one more book. You got at least 20 Dr. Seuss books and none of them end like that. I think I know why this was the only Dr. Seuss book available for me to check out from the library now. So, we'll do one more book, and then I will end it off with something a bit more personal. I will read the preface to one of my favorite books. Unfortunately, no. I know Beardy really wanted me to read One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Instead, he will have to settle for me reading a book about a Canadian who eventually decides his friends suck and throws them away. Which sounds better? Let's do this. So this is The Day My Mom Came to Kindergarten by Maureen Fergus. You're enjoying this ASMR. Oh wait, it's just Popeye. Oh, it's by Maureen Fergus and Mike Lowry. I liked kindergarten from the very first day. It was better than a dinosaur museum, a circus, and a super duper mega 3-scoop ice cream sundae. My mom was happy for me, of course, but I got the feeling that she was also a little sad that I was growing up and starting to have adventures without her. So one morning, when I was standing in line outside the kindergarten door, instead of saying goodbye, I asked if she'd like to come inside. She was so excited that she completely forgot her manners and tried to barge in at the front of the line. "I'm sorry, Mom, but you need to go to the back of the line," I said. "Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to the rest of us." Then, because I didn't want her to feel bad, I added, "Don't worry, everyone makes mistakes at first. You'll be fine. Just watch me and do what I do." She promised she would. But I guess she forgot her promise, because she walked right into the classroom without even taking off her outdoor shoes. My teacher, Miss Beaudry, was nice about it. I was shocked. Who did Mom think was going to clean up all the muddy footprints she'd made on Miss Beaudry's nice clean floor? "Mom," I whispered, as we settled into the carpet for our letter of the day activity. "School is nicer for everybody if you try to be considerate of others." She promised she would make an effort. Does anyone know a word that starts with the letter D? But I guess she forgot that promise too, because the very next minute she shouted out the answer, "Dinosaur!" to Miss Beaudry's question without raising her hand. I mashed my lips together to try to keep them from making a groaning noise. My face got so red that I pulled my whole head inside my shirt. My mom looked down into my shirt, where my head was, and apologized for not waiting for her turn to speak. I peeked up at her and pointed out that she wasn't paying attention to Miss Beaudry. "Talking while Miss Beaudry is talking," I whispered. "Very embarrassing, Mom." It was hard to believe she'd ever been to kindergarten. She didn't even know the basics. For the rest of the day, it was one thing after another. Mom remembered to take off her outdoor shoes after we visited the play structure, but she forgot to put them neatly in her cubby. She dropped crumbs everywhere during snack time and tried to leave the table without cleaning them up. When we were in the library, she kept forgetting to use her indoor voice. She was talking to me all through story time. She swung on the jungle ropes during gym class when we were supposed to be playing bean tag. During music class, she went to the bathroom without asking permission, and then dawdled so long on the way back that she missed her turn on the bongo drums. And when she was having trouble with the scissors during craft time, she made a loud, huffy noise and slammed them down on the table. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know how Miss Beaudry could stand it. But Miss Beaudry said I should remember that Mom had never been to our class before. "Sometimes it takes a while to get comfortable with new things," she reminded me with a smile. "Once your mom gets used to the way we do things, I'm sure she'll learn how to express her thoughts and feelings in more appropriate ways." We agreed that we should give Mom a little more time to figure things out. I'm glad we did, because guess what? She got a lot better after that. During playtime, she wanted to use the blocks to build a skyscraper. Because everyone else was building a castle, she agreed to help. Later on, when the glue poured out too fast and ruined all the shapes she was trying to make to stick to the activity page, she didn't make a single huffy noise or slam the glue bottle down. I'm proud of how hard you tried today, Mom, I told her as we were getting ready to get home. You can come back tomorrow if you want. Thank you, honey, she replied. I think it would be better if I only came to visit once in a while. I can tell from the size of the chairs around here that kindergarten is meant for people much littler than me. And besides, kindergarten is hard work. That's true, I agreed, but it's worth it. It sure is, she said as she shoved her tissue paper craft into her purse. Even so, I think I'll stick to working hard at something meant for people who sit on regular-sized chairs. You know, something that I'm already pretty good at. I thought about this, then I said, You're really good at being a mom, Mom. She said I was really good at being a kindergartner, crumpled some important notes from Miss Beaudry into her pocket, and gave me a big hug. As I hugged her back, I whispered, Now please take your place in line, Mom. Miss Beaudry won't dismiss us until you do. And that was The Day My Mom Came to Kindergarten by Maureen Fergus and Mike Lowry. And the moral of the story is, adults suck and kids are much better. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to read to you the preface from my favorite book series growing up, which is the Inheritance series by Christopher Paolini. So I will be reading the preface to the first book, Eragon. It's not my favorite book in the series. My favorite's actually the second, despite the fact that there's literally 200 pages of dwarf politics. Yes, that was a little bit better than the last book. So we will be ending off with... I don't even think it's that long. I think it's about 5 pages long. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. 5 pages. Who doesn't want 200 pages of dwarf politics? That's a good question. I don't know. Everyone should want 200 pages of dwarven politics. But yes, this will be the last bit of reading for today. Prologue. Shade of Fear. Wind howled through the night, carrying a scent that would change the world. A tall shade lifted his head and sniffed the air. He looked human, except for his crimson hair and maroon eyes. He blinked in surprise. The message had been correct. They were here. Or was it a trap? He weighed the odds, then said icily, Spread out. Hide behind trees and bushes. Stop whoever is coming, or die. Around him shuffled 12 Urgals, with short swords and round iron shields, painted with black symbols. They resembled men with bow legs and thick brutish arms made for crushing. A pair of twisted horns grew above their small ears. The monsters hurried into the brush, grunting as they hid. They did not roll very high on their stealth checks. Soon, the rustling quieted, and the forest was silent again. The shade peered around a thick tree and looked up the trail. It was too dark for any human to see, but for him, the faint moonlight was like sunshine streaming between the trees. Every detail was clear and sharp to his searching gaze. He remained unnaturally quiet, a long, pale sword in his hand. A wire-thin scratch curved down the blade. The weapon was thin enough to slip between a pair of ribs, yet stout enough to hack through the hardest armor. The Urgals could not see as well as the shade. They groped like blind beggars, fumbling with their weapons. An owl screeched, cutting through the silence. No one relaxed until the bird flew past. Then, the monster shivered in the cold night. One snapped a twig with his heavy boot. The shade hissed in anger. The Urgles shrank back, motionless. He suppressed his distaste. They smelled like fetid meat and turned away. They were tools, nothing more. The shade forced back his impatience as the minutes became hours. The scent must have wafted far ahead of its owners. He did not let the Urgles get up or warm themselves. He denied himself those luxuries too, and stayed behind the tree, watching the trail. Another gust of wind rushed through the forest. The smell was stronger this time. Excited, he lifted a thin lip in a snarl. "Get ready," he whispered, his whole body vibrating. The tip of his sword moved in small circles. It had taken many plots and much pain to bring himself to this moment. It would not do to lose control now. Eyes brightened under the Urgles' thick brows, and the creatures gripped their weapons tighter. Ahead of them, the shade heard a clink as something hard struck a loose stone. Faint smudges emerged from the darkness and advanced down the trail. 3 white horses with riders cantered toward the ambush, their heads held high and proud, their coats rippling in the moonlight like quicksilver. On the first horse was an elf with pointed ears and elegantly slanted eyebrows. His build was slim but strong like a rapier. A powerful bow was slung on his back, a sword pressed against his side, opposite a quiver of arrows fletched with swan feathers. The last rider had the same fair face and angled features as the others. He carried a long spear in his right hand and a white dagger at his belt. A helm of extraordinary craftsmanship, wrought with amber and gold, rested on his head. Between those two rode a raven-haired elven lady, who surveyed her surroundings with poise, framed by long black locks. Her deep eyes shone with a driving force. Her clothes were unadorned, yet her beauty was undiminished. At her side was a sword, and on her back a long bow with a quiver. She carried in her lap a pouch that she frequently looked at, as if to reassure herself that it was still there. One of the elves spoke quietly. The shade could not hear what was said. The lady answered with obvious authority, and her guards switched places. The one wearing the helm took the lead, shifting his spear to a readier grip. They passed the shade's hiding place, and the first few Urgles without suspicion. The shade was already savoring his victory when the wind changed direction and swept towards the elves, heavy with the Urgle stench. The horses snorted with alarm and tossed their heads. The riders stiffened, eyes flashing from side to side, then wheeled their mounts around and galloped away. The lady's horse surged forward, leaving her guards far behind. Forsaking their hiding, the Urgles stood and released a stream of black arrows. The shade jumped out from behind the tree, raised his right hand and shouted, "Gargsla!" A red bolt flashed from his palm toward the elven lady, illuminating the trees with a bloody light. It struck her steed, and the horse toppled with a high-pitched squeal, plowing into the ground chest first. She left off the animal with inhuman speed, landed lightly, then glanced back for her guards. The Urgle's deadly arrows quickly brought down the 2 elves. They fell from the noble horses, blood pooling in the dirt. As the Urgles rushed to the slain elves, the shade screamed, "After her! She is the one I want!" The monsters grunted and rushed down the trail. A cry tore from the elf's lips as she saw her dead companions. She took a step towards them, then cursed her enemies and bounded into the forest. While the Urgles crashed through the trees, the shade climbed a piece of granite that jutted above them. From his perch, he could see all of the surrounding forest. He raised his hand and uttered, "Booked." Istalri, and a quarter-mile section of the forest exploded into flames. Grimly, he burned one section after another until there was a ring of fire, a half-league across around the ambush site. The flames looked like a molten crown resting on the forest. Satisfied, he watched the ring carefully in case it should falter. The band of fire thickened, contracting the area the Urgles had to search. Suddenly, the Shade heard shouts and a coarse scream. Through the trees, he saw 3 of his chargers fall in a pile, mortally wounded. He caught a glimpse of the elf running from the remaining Urgles. She fled toward the craggy piece of granite at a tremendous speed. The Shade examined the ground 20 feet below him, then jumped and nimbly landed in front of her. She skidded around and sped back to the trail. Black Urgle blood dripped from her sword, staining the pouch in her hand. The horned monsters came out of the forest and hemmed her in, blocking the only escape routes. Her head whipped around as she tried to find a way out. Seeing none, she drew herself up with regal disdain. Shade approached her with a raised hand, allowing himself to enjoy her helplessness. Get her. As the Urgles surged forward, the elf pulled open the pouch, reached into it, and then let it drop to the ground. In her hands was a large sapphire stone that reflected the angry light of the fires. She raised it over her head, lips forming frantic words. Desperate, the Shade barked, "Garjla!" A ball of red flame sprang from his hand and flew towards the elf fast as an arrow. But he was too late. A flash of emerald light briefly illuminated the forest and the stone vanished. Then, the red fire smote her and she collapsed. The Shade howled in rage and stalked forward, flinging his sword at a tree. It passed halfway through the trunk, where it stuck quivering. He shot 9 bolts of energy from his palm, which killed the Urgles instantly. Then he ripped his sword free and strode to the elf. Prophecies of revenge, spoken in a wretched language only he knew, rolled from his tongue. He clenched his thin hands and glared at the sky. The cold stars stared back, unwinking. Otherworldly watchers. Disgust curled his lips before he turned back to the unconscious elf. Her beauty, which would have entranced any mortal man, held no charm for him. He confirmed that the stone was gone, then retrieved his horse from its hiding place among the trees. After tying the elf onto the saddle, he mounted the charger and made his way out of the woods. He quenched the fires in his path, but left the rest to burn. And that was the preface to Eragon. And with that, we are at the end of this Sleepy Story stream. So once again, I want to thank everyone who made this possible, who wanted this to be possible and contributed, and who showed up today. I hope you all had a wonderful time. Yes, we are finally at the tiger picture. Once again, it is Creative Commons. Author's name is in the bottom right-hand corner if you want it. But yes, once again, thank you, everyone.